So welcome everyone to the Art of Reclaiming Your Sovereign Self, a Warrior Goddess Foundation series. I am Sarina Hartz and I'm going to be your host for the next 6 weeks. I'm very, very excited to be on this journey together and to really dive into ourselves, to dive into our groundedness and to really dive into our authenticity, into our place within ourselves. And so we'll talk a little bit, throughout today about what it means to be sovereign and how to come back home to ourselves. And a lot of the focus today will be on the foundations of Warrior Goddess. And so we'll be talking about agreements and we'll be mapping out kind of our journey of where we're going. So let's start out with a brief grounding just to get us all present here. So closing your eyes if it feels safe to do so, and if not, just looking off to the side. And taking a deep breath into your body. The big exhale. And just allowing yourself to settle here. And imagining that you have roots going down into the ground, that they anchor you. And then when you're ready, gently opening your eyes and bringing yourself present here. Beautiful. So I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you about what brought you here. So you can chat it in the box, or if you want to tell me, you can unmute yourself. Just know that your voice will be on the recording. So who wants to start? Go ahead, Shanna.
What brought me here today was partly you, Sarina, because I have such trust and respect in you in terms of the process around Toltec. One of the reasons why I've done work with Heather Ash, and so I have a very similar kind of affinity and trust with you. And it is my life's purpose to always be learning and growing and challenging and deepening. And so when you sent it out, it just felt like, wow, I've read Warrior Goddess training book. I've done the companion book about 5 times already. I've done the facilitator training. I mean, truly, like, I look at my book and I have the companion book and it's like, done a million times. But I feel like every time I go through it, I get something new and different because of where I am in my life. And so I know that I'm going to get something different from this because I'm in a different place when I did this the last time a year ago, but also different because it's with you and it's with a new group of women. And so I'm excited.
Yay. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you, Shana, for your opening. I am Wendy, and I again have faith, and I know, Sarina, I can trust you. That is true. I've learned that I have to be able to trust in order to be able to learn. You get emails and there's people and you think, oh yeah, I'll listen to that. And you instinctively, once you turn the feed on, right away, you have to shut it off. And anyway, I'm really working to come home to myself. I want that divine consciousness. And I just am so excited, Shana, that you've done that book 5 times. This will be my first time starting. And I am so grateful. I'm so grateful that you offered this, and it was a sliding scale, which helped. I just think that for me, I just want to grow and be better. I don't want to leave this earth and know that I didn't do everything I could to be the best Wendy possible. And so I really appreciate and thank you, Sarina, for your time. I know you're busy, so this is very special. And thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. So glad you're here. So excited to be in this circle together. And then Elizabeth writes, the price was right. I love you and really resonate with your teaching style and abilities. I love this material and never get tired of it. I'm feeling so scattered these days and want to stay connected with Toltec and Warrior Goddess teachings. Perfect. Yes. And so, one of the reasons that I'm offering this right now is because of the places that I've been in the last few months and really digging deep into what's needed right now. When I first started this work, I guess almost 6 years ago, I was in a really dark place and I could barely get out of bed sometimes. And when I was getting out of bed, I was working like so many hours, maybe like 60 hours a week at a nonprofit. And I was going to work sick every day. Like I was fine. I'd be like up and doing things and I was fine. And then I'd get to work and I'd feel ill like all day long. And then I'd get home and I'd be fine again. And so, after I started working with the teachings, I really started to realize that going to work in the environment that I was going into was constantly abandoning myself and constantly putting everyone else before me. And when COVID-19 hit, there was this place of stretching and growing and getting busy again. And I could feel like, oh my gosh, don't go back into those old places, right? Those old places of feeling stuck and feeling like I was constantly abandoning myself. And so I spent a lot of times over the last few months really dropping into what does sovereignty mean to me and what does it feel like if I'm a warrior goddess? What does it feel like when I'm stepping into this path again and like recommitting myself? It's easy, I think, when we've read the book or we've been to a workshop and there's these places where we touch in, we get those teachings, and then sometimes we like veer off a little bit. And so there was this moment where I could just pause and say, okay, sweetheart, like look over your life. Like what has happened in the last 5 or 6 years? How is your life transformed? And you're at a choice point. Like what choice do you want to make now? And so part of this offering is this place of really committing to ourselves and to think about what it means to not only get free, but stay free from our minds and from the places where we often feel trapped. And there's lots of traps, like there's lots of places where we fall back into old patterns, right? Where we fall back into these places that harm us instead of nurturing us. And so my hope is that over the next 6 weeks, we can really get solid on what do each of us individually need and how do we get that? How do we bring that to ourselves? And, I'd love for us to just close our eyes for a moment and drop into noticing the difference of how we feel, like what freedom would feel like, those moments in our life where we felt free, if we have felt free. And allowing that feeling sense to just bubble up for a moment. Imagining that we can kind of capture it. And then to imagine what it was like for women living 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 300 years ago. And the places where they may have felt stuck, where they may have felt trapped. So this may be our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, our great great grandmothers. And then when you're ready, gently opening your eyes and bringing yourself present here. And so, as my mom was dying last year, I imagine everyone knows, but my mom died last year. And I spent a lot of the time leading up to her death really asking myself, what are the ways in which I'm going to live my life differently now that she's dying? So that I can reflect. I mean, I spent a lot of time reflecting on her life and the places where she wasn't free, and the places where she got free, where her mother wasn't free, or where her grandmother wasn't free. And so part of this work is thinking about that. And now to think about, okay, well, if I'm moving forward with my life, where are the places where I can get us more free, where I can get my lineage more free, where I can get myself more free? And although a lot of the women that have walked before us didn't have like physical freedoms the same way we have physical freedoms now, like choosing the job that they wanted to choose, or choosing whether or not to have children, choosing which partner to be with, choosing where to immigrate to. I mean, there's lots of places where the women and those that have walked before us have not had those freedoms that we now in a lot of places have today. And to think about all the places where we're still trapped because of our mind and because of the inside of us, because of the places where we've learned from society that it's not okay to be big, or it's not okay to be bright, where it's not okay to speak our truth or to tap into our intuition. And so we really want to, over the next few weeks, look at where are the places where I don't feel free? Where are the places that I feel trapped, partially through our own creation? And how do we then begin to clean that up? What does that look like? And the other thing to look at with this is, where are the places where I judge myself, where we judge ourselves? Where are the places where we compare? And for a lot of people, women in particular, comparison it's a thorn that is constantly brushing up against us, looking to each other like, oh, well, did you hear that so and so, and look what they're doing. And so to begin to untangle these places where we judge, where we compare, where we victimize, and really come back to our sovereignty, come back to our whole selves. And what sovereignty means for me, and I'll include this in the email I send out as well with the recording, is that sovereignty is this place of being unto ourselves. It is this place of being solid and grounded and of ourselves, in a way that feels authentic, in a way that feels grounding for us, that we don't need to constantly look outside of ourselves for our okayness, that we can be this place of reigning over our own lives, that we can reign over our own selves instead of constantly going outside of ourselves. And really, when I think about sovereignty, it's that place of when we're first born and those first few years of life, when we're connected to our big soul, when we're connected to the essence of ourselves. We're sovereign, right? If you've ever seen a kid who's like 2 years old, they are sovereign. They are able to tell you what they want, when they want it. They don't care about whether you like it or don't like it. And, obviously there's consequences and things like that. But in general, that essence of like, I know who I am, I know what I want, I remember that I'm connected to life. Many of us, as we get older, lose that. We lose that capability of staying connected to that self. And so we want to tap into those places of being creative, of being totally ourselves, and being able to hold on to that sovereignty, to hold on to that authenticity, to hold on to those parts of ourselves that are whole, that oftentimes we shove down and pretend don't exist. for fear, right, of something that's going to come from the outside. And so we want to drop into our wholeness in a lot of ways and drop into that place of being rooted and grounded. And so there's often what happens as we get older is we start to pay attention to the outside world. And the outside world will start to feed us messages. And so we form this image of perfection outside of ourselves. And the image of perfection, I imagine, creating a vision board of a thing that I'm supposed to be. And it's all the shoulds. So they all go into this one place. And I imagine this collage of every advertisement I've ever seen of this is how you should be in the world. And the image of perfection is interesting because part of it is coming from like our own perception of things. And part of it's also coming from the outside of things that we've been told we should be. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And so instead of living fully sovereignty in ourselves, we're constantly living outside of ourselves. We're living in this, we're trying to live in this shell outside of us. And we're constantly looking to it to tell us if we're living our lives correctly, if we are being in the world correctly. And like, that doesn't sound fun to me. And I know it's not fun because I'm exhausted, right? That there's this thing. And what's funny is that as you do this work, and I know some of you have been through this work, numerous times, that the image of perfection then shifts, because now not only do we have like the image of perfection that we grew up with, and maybe we dismantled that, but now we've created a new one that's like, well, if I were a good warrior goddess, and there's that image of perfection. And so I do want to remind us to be mindful and cognizant of the fact that we don't want to use the teachings against ourselves. And I've been studying a little bit with Miguel Jr. lately, and he talks a lot about how the 4 agreements written by Don Miguel Ruiz, that a lot of people turn them into the 4 conditions. And there's this place where instead of them being things that we are doing our best to do, they become things that if we're not doing them, then we're a bad person. And so we want to be really mindful that we're not doing that with any of the teachings, because the whole point of the teachings is for us to get more free. And when we start taking those teachings and using them against ourselves, we're not getting free. We're not becoming sovereign. And so we just want to be mindful of that. And so to check in with ourselves occasionally and see like what happens with that. And, when we're looking to ourselves and we're paying attention to the different things that are showing up with this image of perfection that we're constantly looking at, trying to live up to, it can change costumes, right? It can change the way that it shows up. And part of that is fed by our agreements. And our agreements may change over time. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what agreements are, but the very short version right now is that it's something that we say yes to. It's something that we agree to. So if we have an agreement, it is a belief, it's a thought, it is something that we take on and we say yes to, whether we take it on consciously or unconsciously. But a lot of those agreements come from the media. They come from Facebook, they come from advertisements, they come from the news. And when we think about like how we got here, a lot of it is because of what we've been told from the outside. And so if you look through your Facebook ads, if you pay attention to Instagram, or you, peruse the news stations before going to bed each night, we can begin to pick up on messages that are being sent. Recently I've been looking at like meal prep systems, and now every single ad on my Facebook and Instagram is some sort of meal prep system. And there's so many options. If you just buy the right meal prep system, you'll feel great. And it's really funny to like watch and see also like what grabs my attention and what do I actually like click on, versus do I just keep scrolling? And so, you may want to track yourself over the next few weeks and just notice what ads are you getting, and then which ones actually draw your attention. And so if we're looking at advertisement, what is the general message that we're getting from that? You can type it in the chat box. So just take a moment, think about, when I'm looking at advertisement, what do I see? And you're also welcome to unmute yourself if you want, if that's easier.
Do you mean what catches my eye?
What is the messaging trying to tell you?
The message.
Hannah, you're not good enough until you use our product. Yep, that's definitely a big one.
Yep.
You will be happy if you do this one thing. Yes.
You can miraculously lose lots of pounds if you just buy our food plan.
Yes.
Because you can't figure it out all by yourself.
You can't. They know so many answers that we don't have. Weight issues, cooking, lots of self-healing. Yep. Shanna, it will change your life if you use our program. Absolutely. Yeah, so there's all these places, and the general message, right, if we're constantly looking at these places, is oftentimes scarcity. We don't have enough of something, but if you buy our product, then you'll have enough, right, until the next advertisement comes on. And then the other thing is also around fear. So things like being overweight, of, belonging, like places of, I'm going to die before I heal this thing, but if I buy this dream course, then all of a sudden my entire life will be solved. So paying attention to like the advertisements and the messages that they're sending, a lot of them are this place of you're not good enough. You'd be great if you bought our product. This product will change your life. And what they're all also saying is that you're not okay the way you are. That however you are currently living your life is wrong. And that if you invest in us, that will make you better, right? Nothing about that feels sovereign to me. I don't know about all of you. But it feels constantly like I'm abandoning myself, and there's all these places outside of myself that if I just grab this thing outside of myself, I'll feel better. And so what this is constantly reflecting back to us is that we're not enough, that we're not okay, and that if we just go do this XYZ thing, that then we'll be enough, that then we'll be okay. And, Heather Ash often tells this story about shampoo commercials. And if, people sold shampoo or all products as if like, your life's great, you're perfect, and want your hair to smell nice, buy our shampoo. Like there's this place where they don't have to do marketing in a way that makes us feel gross, that makes us feel like we're less than, or that makes us feel in such a way that our life isn't complete the way that it isn't full, that it's not vibrant, all of those types of things, and instead has this other way that it wants you to go because they're trying to sell their product. And so when we think about this, what we can see is that the reason that they're using that marketing is because it works. Because people will buy their product, because we're so insecure, we're so unsure of ourselves, we are the opposite of sovereign, that we will begin to grab at straws to try and fix it however we can. And we also live in a society that's based on consumerism and capitalism, right? And so what we want to do is begin to make conscious choices, And it doesn't mean we can't buy things, right? But trying to reach outside of ourselves to buy things to fill that void can often leave us feeling more empty, right? And so we want to stop and allow ourselves some time to really drop into what's needed here. And so, in order to begin to create change in our life, to stop reaching for those things that are outside of us, to, you know, retail therapy, instead of doing retail therapy, to start really dropping into our own selves. And there's also, and I'm guilty of this at times too, this place within the spiritual communities of like, buying every single course, never ever getting it done, right? Like never attending the live calls, never ever getting through the books, but like piling all of the things. And it's not right. It's not that like the people who are selling the products aren't wanting to be supportive and that sort of thing, but because of the beliefs that we've taken on, we're like, we have to do it all, instead of being really mindful and like choosing what we want to do. We're like constantly grabbing. And so what we want to do first is really drop into where we are. And so, and just being honest about it. So in these olden days, we had these things called maps, and you would fold it out when you were lost. And what would you do? Does anyone know? What do you find first when you're lost on a map?
Where you are.
Where you are. Absolutely. You're going to find where you are, doop, and then you figure out, where do I want to go? So you can't figure out where you're going to go if you don't know where you are. And I think that a lot of people try to skip over the where you are part and just focus on where it is that we need to go. Like they're like, oh, well, I don't care where I am. I just want to go over there. And there's this place of like wanting to skip over that place of taking a pause, you know, and allowing yourself to drop into, okay, where am I? What does that mean? So we want to begin to just look at where we are at this moment. So once you know where you are, and in order to do this, we really have to look at what agreements we have. So I want you to take just a few moments and jot down a few things around, just like a few words of what it feels like when you're stuck and what it feels like when you're lost. And we're going to keep building on this. So when we begin to drop into what does it feel like when I'm lost? What does it feel like when I'm stuck? What we want to begin looking at is where are we putting our energy in places where it's getting stuck? Because anything that is in our life is partially there because we're giving it energy. So if you're stuck, there's likely an agreement somewhere that is taking energy and you're feeding it. And so we want to, over the next few weeks, break up those things. So let's start by explaining like what an agreement is, and like how noticing like how we put our energy there. What does that mean? So an agreement is something that we say yes to, and we may say yes consciously or we may say yes unconsciously. So there's really two types of agreements. And if you imagine like an iceberg, our conscious agreements are the very tip of the iceberg. And then underneath that are all of our unconscious agreements. And if you've been on this path for a little bit, you may have, more conscious agreements than the average person because you've been doing the work. And most of our agreements are unconscious. They are habits that we formed. They are places that we've decided unconsciously to put our energy into. And so an example of this is that a conscious agreement is something like a job. Like, I'm going to go work at this job for this amount of money. And so you know that you signed a contract or you signed a lease, like if you're renting an apartment or buying a house. That's a conscious agreement. You're saying, I'm going to pay this X amount of money and I'm going to have this house or this apartment. Or it's going into a job, signing a contract. Like, that is a very conscious agreement. We have very few of those in our life where we're actually consciously agreeing to something. Most of our agreements are unconscious. And what that looks like are things like, if someone texts me, I need to respond immediately. So if there's a part of us that believes that, we may say, I must be available all the time. If somebody reaches out, I have to respond immediately. We may not have sat down and said that that's a thing that we have to do, but it's a thing that we act. It's a thing that we take action around in our life. It's a thing we put energy towards, whether we mean to or not. And so with the unconscious agreements, oftentimes they're run by our emotional system. So there are things, there are things that we've said yes to somewhere, and our emotions get activated, and then we begin acting from that place, and our agreements will start showing up. So things like when you're angry, notice what you do. Because anytime you have an activation of a feeling and you then watch what actions you take, it will reveal what agreements you have. The other thing that'll happen is that it will often reveal to you an agreement that occurred in the first place because now you're angry. So like, why did the anger occur? And then what steps did you take after the anger occurred? And so you may have 5 agreements that pop up just from watching that interaction that was like 30 seconds long. And in the, excuse me, in the stalking course that I'm doing later this summer, we'll dive deeper into that kind of thing. Like watching, like what happens in that act of tracking. So noticing the places where we have agreements, and all agreements are held together because we've put energy into them. So if we have an agreement and it's holding energy, that means that there's less energy available to us. And so what we'll be doing over the next 6 weeks is cleaning up our agreements so that we have more energy available to us now. Yay! That's very exciting. So that we can begin to have those. So any questions about agreements or the dream of the planet, like the dream that we're living in? I didn't specifically say that, but actually I'll include that right now. So all of the agreements that we have are feeding into then what feeds our media. And what's feeding our media is a reflection of what's called the dream of the planet. And the dream of the planet is essentially how we're perceiving the world and how humans as a whole are perceiving the world. So the aspects of the dream of the planet that show up are things like fear and scarcity, that we're not enough. The dream of the planet was not always reflecting that to us. And as a result of that, we know that it can change. And so the work that we're doing will add to that. It will add to places where we can get more free, where we can change the dream of the planet, where we can get free ourselves by changing our own lives. And the idea is that each of us, if we do our piece, that over time, the dream of the planet will change. And we're actually seeing it happen right now at this moment with everything that's happening around racial tensions in the US in particular, but it's also happening worldwide, is that the dream of the planet is starting to shift. We have no idea what's actually going to happen, but we're at a choice point. And so it will be interesting to see, you know, in the coming months, what will actually happen, maybe the coming years. But there are these places where things are beginning to shift. And so we'll see. So questions about agreements, dream of the planet, getting free.
Sarina, for me, this is, and I shouldn't be surprised, right? That it's always timely. Before I got onto this call, I said to myself, there's something on this call that is going to help me with this specific situation that I'm faced with right now that has caused me a lot of tears and grief over the last few days. And I'm like, because there's an agreement there. That's why, you know, and it's agreement that I wasn't aware of, that I'm not sharing with this other person. And it has caused like anger and grief and sadness, and it is taken up so much energy that everything else in my life, I'm just like, oh, I can't deal with it because this is taking up so much energy.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Like we have all of these unconscious agreements. We don't share them with others. And then it causes conflict. Like that's how conflict happens a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times. And then we can see it domino effect around us to everything else because we don't have the capacity. We can't do it all.
Right.
For sharing that.
Well, for me, I mean, I've been I've been studying this work and with Heather Ash and you and all this stuff for a really long time. And it just never ceases to amaze me how these agreements can stay unconscious, but they seem to become conscious for me a lot faster. Yeah, I've had a situation with my daughter. I won't go into it all now, but our relationship is shifting because I realized I was putting way more energy into that than was healthy for either one of us. And there's been a lot of grief and pain and anger. And so I'm still not quite clear exactly what my agreement is. It seems to maybe be more than one. So I'm really excited to be doing this work with you and to have this platform and other people sharing to maybe kind of help me unwind some of that. And so yeah, to kind of echo what Shanna said, is like, this is just so timely. And even though I had other things all week, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't fit another thing in. I felt really drawn and really pulled to do this. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Wendy, is there anything you want to share or any questions you have?
Well, I have to be honest. I knew by what you'd put in the lesson, But agreements I have no knowledge. Like, I didn't know how agreements worked. So to me, if I released it, if I did it in ceremony with Mother Moon, I thought that was letting it go. But in reality, it's an agreement. It's not going to leave because I released it. Is it?
Yes. So it's complicated. It's the intent, right? Like, it's the start. And if we keep, just because we release something, release it. Just because we went into ceremony and released it doesn't mean that the action follows. And so you'll learn as we get deeper in each week how we'll actually untangle them. But just because we burn, a piece of paper with an agreement on it doesn't necessarily mean that it goes away. It may be a start for sure, and there may be more work to do.
I mean, I'm amazed. I'm just sitting here. I've got shivers because I woke up and I thought, okay, I really feel different. But it's because maybe I wanted to. I'm not going to say that it isn't real, but the agreement is still hidden somewhere. And at some point, the conscious person will appear, and that all of a sudden will trigger the agreement. I might have already released her, but the agreement is still in place so that she could still trigger me. I'm very grateful to know that. And I will be working diligently on agreement. Thank you.
You're welcome. And there are these places where there are layers to agreements. So you may have you may have taken off like the first layer of that agreement, which is awesome, right? There's less of it. And there may be more to it. There was an email that Heather Ash sent out not too long ago where she talked about Bermuda grass. So when you have grass, when you have Bermuda grass, you can chop off the top of it and it like kind of fixes the problem, but you really have to get into the roots to get it out. And our agreements are very much like that. We can't just chop the top off. It might look better, it might feel a little better, but eventually it's going to grow back. And so we want to get into the roots of our agreements, which will really be what we're working with to untangle the next few weeks, is how do we get into those roots? How do we pull those up and really like excavate our garden and then replant what it is that we want instead of Bermuda grass? Does that make sense? Everyone with me? Yeah.
I think for me, I'm in shock that an agreement, I looked at an agreement when I released it, everything was gone. Like, to me, that, yeah, I absolutely had no idea how deep or what an agreement was. I just didn't. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. And some of our agreements are tiny. Like if they're like little tiny agreements that we haven't fed a ton of energy to, that may totally work. And there are a lot of agreements that we hold that are much, much deeper. That we really need to get out our gardening tools and get in the mud to like pull it all out. So I'd like to take just a few moments and write out in your journals, where do you not feel free on the inside? So look at what agreements you've made that have caused you suffering. And so an example of this for me, one that's really up for me right now is around my health and my constant struggle with like getting strong, like getting my muscles strong. And I'll get like on I'll be working out and then I won't work out. And then I will be working out and then I won't work out. But it's this constant like merry-go-round that I go on. And so somewhere I feel trapped or unfree on the inside because I can't seem to like find the perfect match for myself. Or I do find it and then I get tired and then I stop putting energy towards that and I start putting it towards something else. And so that's an example of like an agreement or somewhere where I feel trapped. So just take a few moments and write out where you don't feel free on the inside or an agreement that's keeping you suffering.
Sarina, do we have to put a place in our body or just the
No.
feelings? Okay, that okay.
Just like you know, if you feel, well, like I feel trapped around not gaining muscle. So I would just write that. It doesn't have to be like a physical place in your body. Or you may feel trapped around your finances or feel trapped around your relationship. About one more minute. Wrapping up. So one of the other places that I often don't feel free in is around my schedule, especially as it relates to teaching at the university, because I have certain days that I have to be on campus and that sort of thing. What's interesting, though, about this particular agreement is that I was confronted with an opportunity to change my schedule, and I didn't take it. And so I can take it back, thankfully. But I didn't know at the time when I made the decision that I felt that way. Like I was so stuck in my agreement that I had to basically be in suffering around my teaching schedule, that I couldn't see it. And so I wanted to share that with you all because it happened very recently, like 2 weeks ago. And it's been an interesting development because I was like, okay, Sarina, you said that this was an agreement that you wanted to break. You had the opportunity to break it and you still chose to go back. It's like seeing the destination on the map and then being like, nah, I know I want to go there, but I'm going to go back over here. Like it was so hilarious to watch it happen. And so now I'm essentially backtracking and trying to figure out like how I can shift it. But that's an example of an agreement that I had where I was feeling stuck. There was nothing about it that felt free. I was completely suffering and then made a choice, a conscious choice that took me back to the same spot of suffering. So what were some of the places where you all don't feel free or where you're suffering right now? Go ahead, Wendy.
It's faster for me to talk than type. My daughter, I can repeat that cycle 1,000 times. Exercise, I am not constant. I get this big going. Craving food, keeping my sugars stable, cooking decent meals, moving. There's a big uncertainty around it, and I'm trusting the universe. The house cleaning and maintaining it, it's too big and too much, and I'm fighting with it every day. I don't follow up on emails, and I don't take responsibility for things. Like I was supposed to apply for EI after I retired. I did nothing for end of April, June, July. Well, 2 months, 3 months. Not doing what I take on. Sometimes I just don't follow through, things like that. And I think that some of those are all one big agreement, but they're the little spider webs that come out of it. Yeah, and not being consistent, with myself in honesty about what I want to do and what I don't want to do. I do things because I have to sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, that place of obligation. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Anyone else want to share? Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, one of my biggest things is right now, because it's really affecting my health in a negative way, is that I was eating a particular way for 18 years and I stopped doing that. I also have diabetes. I hadn't been on any medication in about 17 years. And I've resisted going to the doctor now because my little girl doesn't want to get fussed at or shamed for gaining weight, because I'm about 25 pounds up since last November. And so that has really increased my blood sugar, even if I'm not eating a lot of, what I call the really bad stuff, like cakes, pies, cookies, tons of pasta, blah, 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 the real simple carbs. Because I've gained this weight, it's really affected. So my sugars are high every morning. And I'm really struggling with getting willing to change how I'm eating. I'm eating pretty heavy, not necessarily heavy carbs, but just heavy. And I know it's about my feelings. I know it. It may sound silly to some people, I don't know, but the worst loss I've had recently is my dog. We had him for 16 years and we had to put him down in December. And before that, we found out my husband had cancer. So all these feelings are happening, and I know I'm fixing the food. I fucking know it. I'm not delusional. Anyway, so that's the biggest one. I can't read it now because I'm tearing up. Oh, so I feel real stuck and confused about when my feelings get hurt because I have taken something personal, and up here I get it. I so get it. But I don't know if it's unwillingness or fear around how someone's going to respond if I talk to them about it, or am I just supposed to resolve it within myself and let it go? One of them is this guy in one of my 12-step groups, and the other one is someone I've known for 35 years, but both of them I'm like afraid of their reaction if I say, hey, you know, this happened, and I'm confused because I'm not sure, because the story I'm making up is blah 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 blah, you know, and what was really going on with you. And I you know, when I get around you, when I get in the, you know, warrior goddess weekend women, and around not just you, but, you know, people that speak our language and have been doing this work, I feel like I can do anything. But then when I'm alone with my little girl self, my teenager self, and all that, then I get kind of stymied by it, and just not quite knowing how to have healthy boundaries with my daughter, because it's either all or nothing. It's like when I'm with her, I can't hold my boundaries, and so I go away from her, and that doesn't feel good either. And then I feel really trapped in just all the stuff going on about the virus, and being afraid about my husband because he's so high risk, and he doesn't go very many places, but just seem to always be focused on him and what he's doing, if he's drinking enough water, if he's not eating sugar because he has liver cancer and he shouldn't be eating sugar, and, you know, all that crap. And so I'm really not feeling sovereign. And that's why I wanted to take this course. So anyway, there's my shit. Whoops.
Thank you for sharing it. Any other shares or questions? Yeah, Shanna.
I can share briefly. And one, I just want to say, like, in the hour that we've been on the phone, I just feel like I have such connection and love for all you. I just so appreciate the vulnerability. Two things. So there must be a shared thing around health, because I also am feeling stuck around it, in that I have Lyme disease, and I also have an autoimmune issue that I've been kind of in denial for a really long time. So I am supposed to eat certain foods, not eat certain foods, not drink wine, but I love wine. And so it's like a constant battle of, I eat these foods and then I feel like shit, and then it impacts my family. So that's my common thread around health. And then Sarina, you may know this about me, but I am super introvert. Like, I really love my alone time, and I feel trapped and stuck a lot of the time because I can't find my sovereignty unless I'm alone for long periods of time, unless I'm out in nature for long periods of time. And my life doesn't really afford that. So I have a blended family of, we have 5 boys all here, and my partner's mom lives on our property too. So we're a family of 8. And I'm like, I can't get away. So I feel stuck in trying to get my sovereignty in a family, a large family.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So lots of places, right, where we're feeling yeah, all of the things, right? All of those. I'm like, I don't know how to express it, but those sounds seemed appropriate. These places where we feel stuck. And what's important about this is, we're just by the process of spending like 2 minutes writing out those things, we're beginning to clean up our agreements, because we're becoming aware of them. And that's the very first step, is this willingness to really look at them and to say, okay, that's there. So to illustrate this, we can imagine that all of the agreements that we've ever taken on are in a giant closet. And in this closet, they all live, but there are like nooks and crannies and trap doors and all sorts of things that can happen. And so if you can imagine that anything that we didn't want to deal with, all of the emotions that we've had, all of the beliefs that we've had where we're like, nope, I don't believe that, but we secretly do. We chuck it into this closet and we slam the door and we pretend that the closet doesn't exist. And so those are all of our unconscious agreements. And so the first part of doing this work is the willingness to open that closet door, to open the door, turn the knob, and begin to pull stuff out. So the exercise that we did just moments ago is an act of beginning to pull things out. And if you're really going to clean our closet, what do we have to do? Pull it all out. So a lot of people, when they begin doing this work, their idea of cleaning the closet is like taking a little feather duster and like dusting a few things and then closing the door and pretending it doesn't exist again. Or fixing things on the shelf so that they look a little less chaotic, right? But sweethearts, if we're truly going to be sovereign, what we need to do is pull everything out and begin this process of sorting and organizing. Now, I just went through a giant closet overhaul and it's almost finished. Almost. Not quite, but almost. And the closet was not just the closet, it was also this entire room that I'm sitting in. And I took everything out. And I've looked at every single piece of everything and I've picked it up. And some of the things that I found were things that were gifted to me, that I absolutely love that person. And I'm so grateful that they gifted that to me. And I really just don't have a place for it anymore. It doesn't fit anymore in some way, shape, or form. And so, you know, it has to go in a different pile, a pile that no longer will be in my house. And so we want to begin to look at things like that. What are agreements that we've taken on that were given to us by someone else? And maybe we loved it at the time, and frankly, we just don't have room for it anymore because it's taking too much energy. We may have pieces that fit us perfectly before, and now they don't fit so well anymore. There may be pieces that we wished fit us the entire time they've been in the closet, and they've never fit, and they're probably never going to fit. But what we do know is they don't fit right now, and they haven't fit before. So let's just get rid of that. And if we want to bring it back, guess what? We can. So I want us to spend the next week really diving into our agreements, really paying attention to where we're putting our energy. And this isn't about judging ourselves or victimizing ourselves because we have the agreements. And if you're judging or victimizing yourself, pay attention to what you're judging and victimizing yourself about, because that will point you towards an agreement, right? That will point us towards, oh, there must be a belief there. An example of this that I'll share with all of you is that yesterday I went back to the gym, and I'm on a macro plan. So basically she tells me how many grams of protein I'm supposed to eat and that sort of thing. So I haven't weighed myself since COVID started, mostly because I already know. And I got on the scale and I about died because I had gained 14 pounds. And I love my trainer because I was like, this is really bad. This is horrible. And she goes, it's not great. And then she just like wrote it down. And then she's like, so what action do you want to take? And I was like, I love you, like this place of unconditional, like she didn't shame me. She didn't tell me that, like, of course you should feel bad. And what I noticed in myself was that I had a shit ton of agreements. Oops, my one cuss word for the day. I had a ton of agreements about how much I should weigh, what I should have been doing, blah, 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 blah. So this morning, and this is part of the cleaning process, which is why I'm explaining it. So this morning, I went back and I looked at my scale because I have it attached to an app. And I noticed when I started gaining weight was right after my mom had died. And I have been slowly putting on weight, But then COVID hit and it like came more or less all at once. And I was like, oh, and the agreement broke because I had grace around my mom dying. And the fact that we were in the middle of a huge collective traumatic event, multiple collective traumatic events. And if the worst that happened was I gained a few pounds so that my system could be soothed in the moment, that it wasn't the end of the world. And like that, the agreement shattered. The energy got pulled out. And now I have more energy to put towards cleaning my closet and put towards my meal plan and my workout plan, right? So that's like when I talk about the work that we're doing the next few weeks, it's stuff like that. How in a moment, the agreement can shatter because we've pulled our energy out of it and we've now directed it somewhere else. So that's that place. And when we are doing this work, we need both warrior energy and goddess energy. So the warrior is that place of like, okay, I gathered information and I'm going to take a new action. And it's the discipline that will get me through, right? It's this place of using discernment. So the warrior energy uses our mind in a way that is balanced and helpful. It uses our thought process to use discernment, not judgment. And it's this place of being disciplined, but the Toltec warrior is loving. It is not the excess warrior or the warrior of our society that's like push, push, push. It's pushing, but it's not forceful. It will push you up to your edge, but not over your edge. So an example of excess warrior in a way that's unbalanced is I have a history of disordered eating. And one of the things that I would do is I would exercise for 4 hours a day. That is excess warrior. I'm not going to do that to get back on track this time because I've learned that's an old agreement that I had. I broke it because guess what? I ran my body into the ground. And so there's this place of being really cognizant of like, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try this different thing. But we want to bring in that warrior energy so it can help us go through. But we also need the balance of goddess energy. So goddess energy is creativity. It's grace. It's that place of love. And our goddess energy is also fluid. So what I'm using and harnessing my goddess energy around right now is how do I get creative around getting to my workouts? How do I get creative around my meal plan? And so I get to use different pieces of inspiration to help me get there. And then I get to use fluidity and flexibility when things aren't working. The warrior can get too rigid if we're not careful and just be like, nope, we said this is what we were going to do and we are going to do it exactly this way the entire time. And the goddess is like, wait. We know we want to get there. We definitely want to get to that spot. But like, let's invite our friends. Let's like add some color. Let's get excited. Let's put on a cute costume. And so we want to be able to have both of those aspects when we're breaking up our agreements, when we're cleaning our closet. Because the last thing you want is cleaning your closet with someone yelling at you the whole time, which is what often our minds will do. And we also don't want the aspect of ourselves that's going to clean the closet but never gets it done because we've taken 15 detours. And we're like, but look at this pretty thing over here and look at over here, right? Because that's the excess goddess. And so we want to cultivate these two energies and really feel them in our body so that when we're in the moment, we can call on whatever's needed. And the warrior goddess way, like walking this path, is not about being 50% warrior and 50% goddess. You may be 50% warrior and 50% goddess, but we each have our own unique flavor of how this shows up in our lives. And I bet that if you look back over your life, you can find the places where you were excess warrior or excess goddess, and the places where when you feel whole, when you feel sovereign, what your unique blend is. And we want to be able to call on the energy that we need at any time. So even if you're 95% goddess and 5% warrior, there will be times in your life where you will want to call on that warrior energy to get through a task. And so during a period of time, you may be 60% warrior and 40% goddess, just so you can get through that goal or get through that struggle that you're being challenged by. So we want to have both of those. So we're going to practice. So the warrior energy is this place of going like, and there's this like, I'm going to get it. And so everyone practice it with me. Get your hands up, however it is that you like them. I like the jazz fingers. Those are fun. So get them together. Ready? And you bring them together. And the sound's kind of fun. Heather Ash is very much a sound girl, and apparently now I am too. So we love to like add sound effects. So let's do it again. Hands out. Ready? And feel the amount of energy that you're bringing in, harnessing, and then directing. That is the warrior. Feel the discernment, the clarity. I'm going there, right? Okay, one more time. Big arms, ready. And just feel that sense of like, I'm gonna get it, right? Okay, now shake it out. And then the goddess energy is really open, it's receptive, it's creative, right? It's fluid. And so the movement for goddess, the one that we teach, and you can create your own if you like, is ah. So ah. And there's this place of like openness. So do it again. And feel yourself relax. Feel the grace of the goddess energy. Feel yourself open and receptive to whatever life is bringing your way. One more time. And so we want to allow these two energies to bring themselves into our life, to cultivate them as part of our daily experience. And that can mean that you walk around your house or your home going, and or it can just mean that you're paying attention to the energies that you're bringing to tasks. So it doesn't have to be every task, but I would invite you to pay attention a few times a day. What energy am I using here? Am I using the creative spark? Am I using fluidity? Or am I using discernment? Am I using patience is also that of the warrior. And so paying attention to like, how do these show up? Where do they show up in my life? And explore that. So questions, comments, concerns about any of that?
I have a question. I don't know, I went on vacation for a few seconds. When you were talking about yourself and your trainer and that you had gained 14 pounds and all that, and you said something about the agreement being shattered. I didn't catch what the agreement was.
Yeah, so for me, there is an agreement, and there's really like a few of them, but that I should feel shame about gaining 14 pounds.
Ah, okay.
Because she did not shame me. So in that moment, I could see that I was living out of my image of perfection. I was looking to it about how I should feel. But when I checked in with someone outside of me, I noticed my own domestication. I noticed my own play. Like, no one else was telling me that I shouldn't have gained 14 pounds. That was literally coming from my own mind and image of what I think I should be versus where. And so when we have those moments, for me, that's super eye-opening to how much we control, or not even control, but, well, I guess, how much we impact ourselves because no one else said anything. It was literally my own mind working against me. And there was a fear, I think, that I had that she would shame me. Like, I don't know why. She's never given me any indication that that would be the case. But there was this place where I was like, well, I'm not going to belong, and I'm not worthy to be here, or like whatever those things are. And none of them were true. Does that make sense? And thanks for asking that question, because it just happened. So I'm still working out like that piece of it. Like, how do I talk about it? And I'm sure there will be others. And so if I think of others, I'll share those with the group as well, of how those things, because it feels to me like it's a huge healing point, not just for me, but like my family as well, because it's something that's generational that's happened. And I'm not the first person in my family ever to have these struggles. And so there's also that like larger piece of it as well. And I guess one last piece I'll add about that is my mom spent a lot of years berating me for my weight. And now that she's not here, I'm clearly doing it to myself. And I spent a lot of years blaming her, saying that if she would just stop, then I wouldn't feel so bad. But the truth is, even with her not here, I'm still doing it. And so I still have work to do around like that. That's Bermuda grass kind of agreement. But that was a first step towards cleaning that up.
Well, that's good, because that kind of tells me I need to explore what my agreements are about everything going on in my body. Thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions or shares? Wendy? I can't tell.
Okay, well, yeah, I would have the same thing you had with your mother. I mean, mine used to say, you're just a fat cow, and she'd tell me that every time she seen me. So that's part of the agreement. But I can tell you right now, I probably have an agreement. I am in total, I would say, fear that I'm not going to be capable to do this. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to do this week. Like, so if I feel something like, Marlena drops in, I always have this, I'm going to hide. I'm not going to open the door. She can't see me. If I'm not in the doorways, I don't have to open that door, yet she knows I'm here. And so do I write my thoughts and my feelings regarding that? Is that an agreement?
So your agreement, it sounds like, is that you have to open the door. If you're home, you have to open the door.
Yeah.
I would say that that's one, based on what you just. It sounds like there are other agreements there. So what you can do is write out your feelings and your thoughts, and then look for, what am I saying yes to here, even if you don't want to say yes. So an example is, if she shows up, I have to open the door. You're saying yes to doing something that you don't want to do.
I don't want to open the door.
Right.
And I house. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But my fear, literally, I can feel the fear, right? Stuck, that this is going to overcome me. Because I fail. Mm-hmm. So going to look at that because now I've just said I didn't think of the failing because I always told, yeah, okay, I'm okay, I'm getting it. I'll keep running around with a notebook and a pen. Actually, what I might do is just take my phone and talk into it and then write it after maybe. I don't know. I'll find a way because this is important. And I don't know about Shayna and Elizabethy, but I probably have 100 agreements a day. It's my whole actions. So I would need to be, and I will be really cognizant because I'm isolated anyway. All right, I think I've got it. If I don't, I'll be sending an email.
Perfect. So here's, sweethearts, we don't have to like pull out all of our agreements this week. So if you start to get overwhelmed, push pause. It's okay. We just want to start somewhere. So the sheer act of opening the closet, having the willingness to open the door and like pull things out, we want to pull it all out before we put it back in, but you don't have to sift through all of it this week. And so you can take your time, but I will give you the skill, or I'll teach you the skills so that you can continue to do this even after the 6 weeks. Because the truth is, a lot of us will be cleaning most of our closets for the rest of our lives. And hopefully, you know, we get to the next lifetime and there's a little less to clean up. But there's this practice of taking our time, going through it mindfully, and being able to just to notice it, to notice. And what most of us will find is that a lot of our agreements are tied to the same, like 5 core agreements, that a lot of them will come down to a few agreements that are major ones in our lives, that are the roots, basically. And a lot of those are things like, you're not good enough. And so we'll dive into that like as we get further into the work. And so I'm going to send out this recording, as well as your worksheet, which will have digging deeper questions. You don't have to do them. And if you want to, I think they're fun to just begin to explore a little bit more. And so your invitation is just to begin exploring. What do your agreements look like? Where do they show up? What are the repeat ones? Because oftentimes we'll have repeat ones. And then to look at how warrior and goddess energy show up in your life. Where do you need more warrior energy? Where do you need more goddess energy? And to pay attention to those. So any last questions or shares?
Like to share, Sarina, that I'm grateful for you, you know, putting this offering together and bringing this group of ladies together. And I'm really looking forward to the next 6 weeks. And I've already gotten a lot out of today's session.
Yay. Thank you so much, Shanna. Any other questions or shares?
I just wanted to share that I'm always fascinated at what the universe has in store, because not just you, but another woman that I met in another circle of women many years ago, I thought we would be good friends, and she ended up being like one of my best teachers. And we're still kind of friends, but you know, we don't hang out a lot. And the same thing with you. I mean, I was so happy when I met you, and I didn't know you, and now you've ended up being one of my really important primary mentors. And I just have so much gratitude right now. I started crying as soon as you started talking today.
So grateful that you're here, and you're one of my mentors as well. Wendy, doing okay? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. And next week, we are going to dive into activating our authentic truth. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Mwah. Much love to each of you, and I'll see you next week. Bye, loves.